Established in 1994, Sprayville Bluff State Park was set aside on a piece of land owned by Georgia Power. In the mid-1900s, a dam was proposed for the area, but Governor Jimmy Carter vetoed it once he saw how beautiful the park was. Known as the, quote, unknown gem of the Flint River, end quote, Sprayville Bluff is isolated, yet its uniqueness compared to the other parks set it aside from the others. Sprayville Bluff is much different from Unicoi and FDR State Parks. Because it is an isolated park right near the Flint River, its staff was cut almost immediately when the economy crashed, and now only has one man and his family living on the property that checks the sites periodically. No friends group are even active in the area because the park is so small. Even so, park passes are still upheld at the park, which bring in some revenue, but camping there is free, so not much revenue is coming in. In the future years, Don McGee and other managers would like to try and reinstate the staff to Sprayville Bluff in order to bring it back on the maps and a more well-known park because it is truly beautiful. But until then, people must keep coming to the park in order for the small park to survive the economy. Unlike the other state parks of Georgia, Stone Mountain State Park was created for commercialization, but has a huge emphasis on conservation as well, surprisingly. On February 21st, 1958, Governor Marvin Griffin established Stone Mountain as a state park. The park began to be commercialized by creating a scenic railroad around the mountain, a laser show in the later years, and even a skylift that opened on November 28, 1962 to the public. In the 1980s, Stone Mountain sold a contract to Hershen Family Entertainment Corporation, where the corporation would have the rights to privatize part of the park that Stone Mountain allowed. Even at one point, Stone Mountain tried to get a highway that ended at the park itself from Atlanta in order to get more visitors. Stone Mountain is a very unique state park because it is privatized and affected by the economy thusly. But even though the park is privatized, that does not mean that the Hershen Corporation has full access to the park. Part of the park is set aside for reservations where no buildings can ever be built upon for conservation reasons and also for respect to the mountain. Also, any decision that is made by the Hershen Group must be passed off by the state government before anything can happen. The system of checks and balances keep the corporation under control, but also the corporation still supports Stone Mountain, so it is a win-win situation. But because its staff is paid and the state does not fully support it, the furloughing is not as great as the other state parks that are supported just by the government. But like all places, the economy still affects the price of maintaining the park, and it is more because of all the rides and such that come along with it. Even so, Stone Mountain's publicity make up for this. Stone Mountain's world-famous laser light show brings together people from all over to see the monument light up on the horizon. It is even being renovated at the moment to add more lasers for the show starting in May. Also, many school programs bring entire grades and schools to Stone Mountain to learn about the Western themes at Crossroads, the Confederates in the Confederate Museum, and geology in the Confederate Museum as well. The main furloughing at Stone Mountain has to do with bus drivers, cleanup crew, and lower management. And because it is completely private, all revenue and budget comes from itself, not much from the state. All of these parks have such a unique history, but all of them are run and supported by the government of Georgia, specifically the Department of Natural Resources and the Georgia State Parks and Historic Sites Division. But what makes up the Georgia State Park and Historic Site Division, and how does it support the Georgia State Parks? In an interview with Becky Kelly, the director of Georgia State Park and Historic Sites Division, she says that the job as director has two prongs. Quote, I administer federal funds to local governments to build their recreational tracks. This is not as well known as the other prong, which is to administer the natural and cultural resources in the government for the parks and citizens of Georgia. Every member of any state park staff also worked for the Department of Natural Resources. From the managers to the visitor center greeters to the director herself, all of them work together in order to try to preserve these parks. The main funding for the parks include two types of funding, the general fund and the general obligation bonds. The general fund includes money from all state taxes, sales tax, and income tax that is, quote, put into a pot and an assembly divvies it out, end quote, as Director Kelly said. Some of the money flows into the Georgia State Parks and Historic Sites Division, where Director Kelly then spreads out the money among the 63 state parks and historic sites all around Georgia. General obligation bonds, on the other hand, are like, quote, a mortgage on a house, end quote. The division gets money from a state and gives it to the parks as good faith, and they can pay it back over time. Ironically, last year this money was used to create 2 new parks, but in the economy like it is today, all the other parks are having a tough time surviving as well. The Georgia State Park and Historic Sites Division also is across the street from the Capitol and has a regular relationship with state Congress in order to try to keep the money flowing in, and also to try to get legislation passed in order to protect the state parks in the economy of today. The Georgia State Parks are supported by the DNR, but what does the DNR specifically do? In a PowerPoint presentation given to me by Director Kelly, The importance of the Georgia State Parks is to, quote, attract tourists, business, industry, and new residents, create jobs, enhance property values, reduce health and infrastructure costs, and to generate local spending and economic development, end quote. It is a large responsibility, but Georgia seems up to the task. In the past 2 years, Georgia has been a 2-time finalist for the State Park National Gold Medal, a prestigious award given by the National Department of Natural Resources to state that Georgia is a good steward to their resources and parks. In the course of a year, over 10 million visitors travel to one or more of the 64 Georgia state parks and historic sites, so having such strong leaders is a necessary task. In order to spread out the money and help most efficiently to areas in Georgia that need it, the GASPHS has done studies in which the counties of Georgia are split into 4 tiers based on the number of state parks they host and also the amount of funding that they need to help the state parks last. For example, Tier 1 counties are the most economically challenged and dependent counties of Georgia and account for over 43% of the state parks and historic sites in Georgia. Based on what tier a county/park is in, more or less money and support will be given to that state park in order to balance out and use all resources most efficiently. But what most people do not think about is the effect of the state parks among the local communities they are in. Based on research compiled by the GASPHS, quote, for every $1 of state funds invested in 2009, $33 was generated in local economic impact, end quote. The $33 includes tourists coming into the towns and buying goods, eating, buying land, etc. This number is staggering. Many of these small towns that have nearby parks rely for upwards of 50% of their annual revenue on the state parks and tourists that the state parks bring in constantly throughout the year. With more money, local communities can expand, create more jobs, play a bigger part in the state community, and be a place where tourists want to go as a destination. Even state parks play a vital role in every community is in. Without the state parks, a great loss of jobs will ensue. In every park, the park staff is all local, maintenance is normally local, and support groups are all local. As Director Becky Kelly said in her interview with me, quote, if the parks go away, the jobs and support go away. It is a chain that we do not want to occur, end quote. The parks annually bring in over $700 million to the state government. This is not a number to be skimmed over.